Well, thanks everybody for showing up. I was just feeling like there are so many things we could be talking about. It's really hard to choose. But one thing that really kind of was close to my heart is seeing the whole movement in Bainbridge and North Kitsap to call out the rape culture in our schools, particularly, but also in work situations. And though it isn't directly related to race, it often does tie into race. And I would just love to hear various people's comments about it. I think for me, it feels like one of the healthiest things that's come about in a really long time is being able to speak honestly and freely about what's happening. And when we get ignored or pushed back, we can say that too. When I was in school, we couldn't. We didn't have uh, a lot of options and we didn't have a lot of support. And it sounds like you still don't in a lot of situations. So I would love to hear what people think about this emerging but long-standing issue. Hey, Tom.
Well, just coming from the equity meeting I was just at, Sophie Coleman joined us, and she's one of the main leaders of the sexual assault movement on the island, which was really exciting to be able to speak with her. And I have always seen, I guess, sexual assault and like lack of attention from like police departments and stuff about sexual assault as kind of a faraway issue. I didn't know that it affected our island so much. So hearing Sophie Coleman's story and her talking about other women's stories, going to the police department and not getting the attention they deserve, or just the trust they deserve. And so that was kind of eye-opening and scary to hear. And so that makes this movement just all the more real.
Right. I think there's a lot of things from racism to sexism that we don't want to think happens here on our beautiful island. But in fact, we're all human beings, which means we make messes a lot. Emily, what do you think about this?
So I think for me as an educator and a woman who grew up on Bainbridge, what's exciting is how vocal these young people are being and how they are normalizing these conversations, because we know that we often get a semester of sex education sometime in school, but that's not enough. And in order to change not just what's done in schools or in police departments, but also what happens in student environments, you have to really be out there and be talking openly. And so the fact that these young women who aren't actually, from what I understand, they weren't friends beforehand. They found each other through this, through Sophie first publicizing her experience. And they're now gathering people to share their stories, which is really awesome. I also really like the fact that they're very clear about what their platform is. So they're not trying to just get attention. They actually have really specific goals in mind. So Sophie was talking to us about those. They include making sure that consent education is part of every year of school, in an age appropriate way, right? But that K through 12, we talk about what it means to have control over our own bodies. They want to work with the police department to make it feel like a safer place for survivors of sexual assault. So that might involve recruiting female detectives to work there. It might mean having somebody who is specifically designated to work with victims of sexual assault. And then they're also working to create, I guess, more tiered levels of support for survivors of sexual assault. So they want to make sure that students can find someone to talk to and that they can choose whether they want that to then lead to an official police intervention. Students don't often know about the mandatory reporting that all teachers, if a student comes to me with an experience like sexual assault, I am required by law to report that. And so they're getting trained themselves so that some of them can be advocates without having to be mandatory reporters. So kids have a safe place to start talking before it gets escalated in that sense. So they have really, really specific goals in mind. And I just think, I feel really optimistic about where this is going, both in terms of institutional change, but then also in terms of cultural change.
That is awesome to hear.
Emily, who do you report to such experiences?
So as a teacher, if I have a student talk to me about an experience of sexual assault or an experience of physical of abuse, I am required to report it to a school administrator and then to call Child Protective Services. And so there's a whole process that we go through. And depending on, of course, who is involved, I might choose different people that I would join with to do that.
In my experience as a school administrator, talking with CPS about possible problems is that they were amazingly supportive and helpful. I don't know if that's always the case, but they, some years ago anyway, when I was doing that, I found it very, very helpful to be able to call and say, here's what I'm observing, here's what we're seeing. We're wondering what kind of intervention should we do? We're not calling it a case yet. And they were great about, you didn't have to leap right into the full-blown thing, but offering lots of options for us to work with the kids. These were younger children, but yeah, I found them a resource. And I think a lot of people don't think of them as a resource. They think of them as a punishment. I see a lot of heads nodding. Does anybody want to contribute to this conversation?
Well, I just wanted to contribute because, having come from a family where there was sexual assault, that a lot of times it is caused within families. And it's so excruciating for the victim to come forward and to have that a trusted teacher or a counselor, an administrator for a student to go to that is compassionate is so important. And I was in elementary school situation in California, and we didn't have so much sexual abuse, but we certainly had physical abuse that we had to, of course, wanted to report. But I look at educators like Ann, you in the past, Emily now, is that being approachable for students who are just going through a horrible time is so important. So thank you for being there and in the past and for being there now, because it's not easy to report this stuff. It's in the past, I think a lot of us know either ourselves or our friends that it was a very shameful thing to go through, so, to know that and have that communication out there is that don't be afraid. This is your life. This is going to affect you.
Don't be ashamed, I think.
And don't be ashamed.
It's like this is not your fault.
Exactly.
Which I think is the feeling that a lot of young women have, just unconsciously, probably from the cultural that they were supposed to do something to control somebody else's behavior and they didn't know how to, and now they're being blamed and the perpetrator is somehow slipping off.
Right. So
I can remember, and I'm not proud of myself, I can remember saying to one of my friends, well, what did you expect when you were wearing those clothes? I have said that to somebody back. Okay, it was 40 years ago. Maybe
I
more.
know.
But in my day, it was shameful and you were at fault and you were not believed for the most part. And you were looking for trouble or trying to get attention or trying to mess up a young man's life. And unfortunately, we still hear that crap. But I think one thing that has really helped, weirdly, is the Me Too movement, which a lot of women, particularly, but also some men, calling out very publicly people who are well known. Somehow that also normalized, like Emily was saying, that normalized the conversation. And Me Too became, and I have to say, when I was in high school and college, I don't think I knew any woman, any girl who had not had sexual harassment or date rape or stranger rape or some kind of violent experience with, I don't know, there wasn't always an attack exactly, but it was just so commonplace that people were like rolling their eyes if you tried to talk about it.
Yep.
I don't think we're rolling our eyes anymore.
No. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that, we've evolved finally. Yeah.
You know, the things have changed so terribly much. It's amazing for me to listen to this because I had the quote Uncle John, who lived down the street from me and had sexually abused me as a young person. I guess I was probably 7 or 8 or whatever. I have no idea. I only found out about it after going through hypnosis. Believe it or not, it was interesting as just a evolution for me, and to find out about it, and then to approach not my father because he wasn't alive anymore, but my brother. He said, "Oh yes, that was Uncle John," and he never came around anymore. And that was it was kept within the family. You know, it was totally kept within the family. I had completely forgotten the room that it took place in my house. Even when I would draw pictures of my house, that room was not existent. It was really strange. I had completely put it off. But that was, you know, I'm talking 65 years ago, easy. And so it's evolved. And I just want to, the reason I say this is because I'm so impressed with how it has evolved, that people are now talking about these things. I think about that often because I've worked with women in alcohol and drug abuse halfway houses and situations as a counselor, and almost without, I'd say every single 99% of them have been insisted upon or sexual abuse of some sort or another. And at that point we just started, and that was 30 years ago, and we were just starting to talk about these things then. And I'm so grateful for everybody here who is have anything to do with this, because just keep the spark going, you know, really keep it going.
Well, I come at this from a couple of different points of view. One is Lawrence and I were both teachers, and so of course we were in California, but you were required by law to report anything. And that always caused a lot of anxiety. And then if you told, when you told, for instance, the administrators, then it was trying to see, like, following up what happened then. And it caused a lot of angst for the person going through it and for the people trying to feel responsible. I'm also coming at it from, I have 2 granddaughters in high school on Bainbridge Island, and we have had numerous conversations, their dad and the girls and us, about what goes on at Bainbridge High School, and very upsetting. And very little done, even when the powers that be know who the perpetrators are. And this is 2020, and that is really upsetting. One of my granddaughters was at the meeting they had at the high school, and but both of them they haven't personally been assaulted, but it's all around them, and they're afraid, and nobody wants to do anything. So I am glad we're talking about it, but it seems to me we have to get past talking about it and start doing something about it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's it's so painful to talk about. It really is. And you know,
one of the things that has been mentioned is the people doing it are privileged people on the island, and not much wants to get done because of that. They're not, and they're pretty outstanding kids at school. And so even when they even when it was sort of common knowledge, there wasn't
No accountability.
no accountability.
That's not good.
Nope.
Yeah. Because I'll tell you, when we're going through our formative years and we're not held accountable for our actions, we become adults that decide that we don't need to be accountable for our actions. And these are lessons, life lessons that we all have to learn. And it's very sad that to hear about this. I'm sorry, I haven't been up on this that much. I've been doing other things, and to hear about this is just heartbreaking.
And
Yeah.
and the comments that were from when we were young, and well, they don't want to spoil somebody's life or ruin up that person's getting ready to go to a big college, or this person's getting ready to do this or that. That seems like
Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
And if that person goes to the big college and feels
Yeah.
enabled to just continue with that
Exactly.
behavior and not
Exactly.
learn that lesson, I mean, education comes at all different levels.
Right.
And it comes through our, what is taught to us in subjects in school, but it also comes through us in life experiences. And
Well, if the person is not being held responsible, then on, as you're saying, it doesn't make any difference at all. They're just going to continue the behavior until
Yeah.
until somebody really gets hurt. Well, somebody's already been hurt, but I'm talking murder or whatever, any kind of responsibility kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems to me like what Emily mentioned, I think something about this, about the specific goals of having consent be taught at every age. It
Yes.
seems as though there's some level of misunderstanding or counter programming culturally that some of these, I'm assuming mostly boys, are being raised in an environment where, I mean, I do remember as a young boy feeling like there was some peer pressure to have sexual contact with girls. And that was among boys, not something that involved girls, that conversation. And so you might be, I mean, I could see how you would objectify the girl in pursuit of a social standing among boys or something. And that's obviously the problem. No consent is needed.
Yeah.
And no doesn't necessarily mean no. And that's, and I'm sure also, I mean, it's not like anybody in this situation always is knowledgeable. So that's why this kind of conversation seems so important, because it's like getting this out means that you can actually, in a non-sexualized environment, have a conversation that might open your eyes to the humanity of the other people.
mm-hmm.
And one thing to think about is, as parents and grandparents, we can talk to our kids about their kids, and we can talk to those kids, the grandkids, as Lawrence and Bonnie were doing that. We, can bring our encouragement for them to stand up and tell them how proud we are that they are having these conversations and are normalizing these conversations about so many things that we were not allowed to talk about. I grew up in Queensland. You didn't talk about politics, money, sex,
Right.
pretty much anything that actually meant anything. And
Right.
now I think, it's more, sometimes it's embarrassing or uncomfortable, but I think it's so healthy and freeing to get past those shamefulness, the shame piece that Reed called out earlier, I think is really important.
I just got through talking for an hour with my grandson, Dylan, who's 25, 26, and talking about racism and the things up at up on the Capitol Hill. He was part of the protests up there. He said, "I'd never go there again now. It's too dangerous. You can't go there now." But he said when we were there, the spirit was so great and so fantastic. We talked, so he and I talked about, he said that it's hard for him. Here's 25 years old, my God, it makes me cry. I'm losing my spark, Mimi. I'm losing my hope, is essentially what he's saying. And I said, look, I don't care if I'm alive or not, but you're gonna have me looking down on you and saying, the spark has got to be there, my God. You've got to be there, Dylan. And I said, in case you see a lightning bolt come down after I'm gone, that's me, man. So I'm like, don't lose that spark, God damn it.
Yeah.
And I think to him, like, I mean, he and I talk like this. So it was amazing, and it was amazing sort of disruptive type of conversation, but it seems to happen all the time. He calls me about once a week or so, and we always get onto this. And I feel so badly about it, I do. But you know what? And I put this as an aside because there is happiness in his life, in that he saw the David Blaine balloon thing go up in the sky. Did you guys see that? It's absolutely unbelievable. And his joy of going up there and being able to go as far as he did, 24,000 feet or whatever, and come down and be safe. He said, it was amazing. He said, that's how we ended the conversation. And I was so glad to be able to do it from that point of view. But actually I ended it by saying, don't lose the spark, you blind. So anyway, yeah, they're there to talk to. And my granddaughter, same way, the kid, they are there and so aware and awoke. They're awoke. They're woke people these days. I'm amazed at these woke kids. It's wonderful.
It is wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Gigi, do you find that kind of wokeness within your generation?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say I'm so amazed with people my age about how normalized we have, about how normalized conversations are. And I think conversations are so important. I know since I was a young girl, I've had the talk about how like men may look at me, or how I need to be careful walking alone, and how I need to protect myself and choose what I wear carefully. And I've had that conversation for a long time with my parents. And I know that a lot of young girls have. And I think where we lack is I don't think a lot of parents are talking to their young boys about how to treat women and how to respect them and how to respect consent. And so I think it's a really one-sided, and the responsibility has kind of been put on girls' shoulders. And I don't think enough conversations have been happening. And really, girls can be predators too, obviously. So I think there needs to be a lot more conversations so we can stop the actions rather than protect ourselves from them. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And I just want to say, as a mother of, two girls and
Bonnie?
a boy,
Yeah.
that I certainly had those conversations.
Oh, Bonnie, you're cutting out, honey.
Yes, that I certainly had. Okay. All right. I don't know. But I had those conversations with my kids, and that was, a long time ago when they were kids, but it was just part of what was normal to say and okay to say.
I think that educators, I think a lot of educators were kind of naturally going that way with their own children. That,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that
some of us are engineers, and some of us are, do other jobs or whatever, and it's not within our wheelhouse to be able to communicate with our children like that. And
when my kids were in middle school and high school, I realized that I was completely unequipped to have these conversations, and they didn't have a dad figure around at that point. And so I went into the bookstore and said, I need some, balanced, beautiful, wholesome books about sexuality. And they kind of looked at me and started laughing, like, maybe you should write one.
Yeah, right.
I did find a book called The New Male Sexuality. And I was looking through it, and the introduction said, and this has got to be 30 years ago. And the introduction said, why is it the new male sexuality? Because the first edition didn't have the word relationship in it. Seriously. So that is a way to see like how our young men were brought up for many, countless generations, that the word relationship was not a big player in the conversations anyone was having with them, or very few people probably.
Mhm.
And so I made my kids and their friends all read this book. We had like a little book club, and then we started talking about it. And they were saying stuff like, Mom, you really don't know very much about sexuality at all. It's like, you're right. I mean, I married your dad, right? There's proof. But it was, we had great conversations, but it was sort of hilarious because they were telling me a whole lot more than I was able to tell them about certain things. And I think this all started because I found them. Oh, I know what it was. I got a call from one of the early internet groups that everybody was first on, whatever that was. And they said somebody on your account is downloading what was like visual material or something. And I was like, oh, you mean like technical manuals? And they're like, we mean pornography. And I was like, what? So I got the kids all lined up and they all denied it. And then the little one cracked. He was like 10 or something. And he said, yeah, Mom, so Matt went on the fetish site and downloaded some stuff and we were looking at Playboy, but it wasn't the real kinky stuff. And I was like, oh my God, we need to do something. So I was trying really hard to find ways to, find wholesome information for my boys, right? All this group of boys, there were 6 of them. So I got them a subscription to Playboy, and they all read it a bunch of times, they'd share it around. And then when I said, do you need to renew it? They're like, no, it's all the same. It's just the face and the skin color changes, but basically it's all the same stuff. Some good articles though, right? Which I thought was funny. But it was like, there really wasn't a lot out there for anybody like me who's trying to, supply the dad, uncle, brother role of like educating the boys, and being told that I was pig ignorant was really pretty funny, but it was also true. I was pretty ignorant. I think many of us in my generation and older generations have been very ignorant about our own sexuality, our own rights about our own bodies. And the whole idea of consent was actually kind of eye-opening to me at a very late age.
Me too. Anybody else have anything to share?
I have a question, and I guess it's about the school. Is the school board involved in this at all?
So I am not directly involved in any of these conversations, so I can only give secondhand information here. But I do know that the group of girls, Sophie Coleman and others, met with the superintendent and spoke with him. They also met with the chief of police and with the BHS principal. And so I imagine the school board is involved through that, right? I don't know exactly to what degree. And one thing I just wanted to put out there that is so tricky about the schools, which is why I'm so glad that all the young people have a community like you guys, right? That they have grandparents who talk to them about things, parents that talk to them about things, is that we have such like crippling privacy laws as well in the schools, right? And so when I think about, when we talk about knowing that there are sexual predators in our school environment, as a teacher, that is one of those things that makes me so uncomfortable because I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Right? Because administrators can't tell me because of student privacy laws. And so I only find out if there's some kind of legal process that says these 2 kids can't be in a class together. And so it is really, it's really hard to watch a big organization try to deal with this. I know my administrators care so deeply about the kids, and I know a lot of kids who have found a lot of support there, but it's tricky, which is why I think it's so great that you guys are having this conversation, because it's got to be happening everywhere, and kids need to have people who ask them these questions, you know, and tell them these stories and get them to open up wherever they are. So that was, I'm sorry, I totally took advantage of that and went off your question. So I'm guessing the school board is, they're a lovely group of people, but I don't know what their role is exactly right now.
And would it be, and then I'm assuming then that the school board would approve any curriculum changes or additions, or that it would have to come from the school board.
It usually, so it would get developed within the schools and our curriculum department, and then the school board does have to approve it. But if you guys saw our recent district improvement plan, this school board is really open. So I think that there's some good opportunities right now.
Tressa, if I could ask you as a librarian, what are you seeing, any kind of trends in terms of what people are looking for and kind of the kinds of books that are coming out, whether there's better educational material for parents and for kids? Is that something that's starting to happen?
Tressa, we can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
Is that better?
Yes,
Oh,
thank you.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. In the publishing world, I'm aware that there's quite a bit being published for younger children, like juveniles, so middle school age maybe. The topic in terms of for parents, there's been a real, in my experience in Bainbridge, is that there's been a real steep decline in questions about topics that one may consider private, like this, because our desks are no longer private. You can't have a private conversation with somebody, with the librarian. And so people are not asking me questions about, support for divorce, sexuality, pregnancy. Those questions have just gone away. Obviously, they're still there, but that opportunity is not. They're not coming to me as a librarian. When prior to becoming a librarian, I was a American Sign Language interpreter with a specialty in working with young people, K through 12, and their developmental social linguistic development. And when I saw the website that these young women have put together, it just almost just brought tears to my eyes, because as someone in the school district, as often the only other adult in the room, in a classroom, it was appalling to me. I know there are many teachers here, but there's an awful lot that goes on in those classrooms that is perpetrated by the teachers that are harmful. And these people are the adults in the room. So for me, seeing that these women are coming forward, that they're talking about it out loud, that they're, standing at the circle with signs, they're making it clear to everybody that they have their eyes wide open. And that is going to make it harder. And I'm going to be clear that I have not worked in the school district here. This was in Oregon. Clear that some of, you can't take some papers and swat a gal's butt in the classroom, right? Because we know that's not appropriate. We're not going to let you get away with it. And so, and I think that, having been in several situations where, it's interesting as an interpreter, because I worked with one gentleman in the high school 2 years, and he used his own voice to talk, but he would look to me for for receptively to get what other people were saying. And so over the course of working with him, I was an invisible person in that classroom. Nobody ever heard my voice. I stood there. I mean, I was visible, but probably, at some point in the middle of the school year, I started hearing about the girls that were getting beaten by their boyfriends, or attacked, or the school parties, or stealing from local businesses, or, you start hearing all of this information. And one situation in particular where it was a teacher perpetrating the emotional abuse, I guess, the sexual inappropriate manner, and the school district refused to. It was the school district that really kept that under a lid. And so again, I think having the kids and having the students themselves very vocally coming out and saying, we know that this is an issue, and we're talking about it, we're not afraid to talk about it, is really powerful. And I think that is the same thing for the boys, how powerful for them to hear from their classmates, that's not okay. And we know it's not okay. So I just am so impressed and yeah, I feel like I can't find the words. I was so happy to see that these young people are talking about it.
It's definitely time, way past time. Yeah.
Is the website that you were speaking of, Tressa, the one that you've been talking about that Gigi is involved with, and is that available for anybody to get on, or just for the folks that are in there? And if so, what is it? If it was possible to get involved in that, what is it?
I think Reed just shared it. The Let's Talk Sexual Assault. It's in the chat box.
Okay, I see that. Thanks, Reed. So that's for anybody and everybody to go on to. Is that correct? Thanks, Emily. Thank you.
It's really amazing. And I think that's where I mean, it's important for adults, of course, to be talking about it. And I think, but when you've got the kids themselves being vocal, that's where change is going to really come.
And as I said earlier, one of the things that I think is really cool about this website is that these girls are not all from the same social circle or grade level or friend group, right? And so that is an important message to send to people, that this happens to everyone. It's not just, a particular subset of people. And so it is really cool. And I like the variety of ways they're reaching out. And if you guys wanted to know more, I don't know if you've seen, Sophie Coleman has interviews on the Wake Up Bainbridge channel, and they've got Instagram. I mean, they're really being good about getting their message out, but they're keeping it very personal, which I think is nice.
And what is it that we can do to help or to support these, to support the high school, to support the students in the high school?
That's a
Rita.
great question. Great question. Gigi, I don't know if you're still here. If you have any ideas, I can also go back and ask them and we can report back to you.
Hi, I'm still here. Could you repeat that question one more time, please?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering what we can do to help support the high school and the girls and the boys, or what we can do to support you guys.
That's a great question. I know that we were talking about that. I know a lot of us have a lot of passion. It's just like finding where to direct that can be difficult. I know we're going to devote an equity meeting next week at Friday at 1 o'clock about what like our next action steps are going to be. And so you are, I guess, definitely welcome to come to that meeting. But I think that we're talking about just one idea we had was definitely support Sophie Coleman's movement and potentially write a letter to the Bainbridge Island Review just to show how like students are supporting. But it could also write to just like share real information. But I don't know if I'm the best person to ask because we're going to discuss that next meeting. So I don't want to give you any false information. But I think if anyone, I mean, I'm not a leader of the meeting or anything like that, but I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem if anyone wanted to join that meeting just to see what we were up to and how they could help as well.
Okay, and if you guys could leave like contact information or how we can find out, or if you want to come back and let us, you know, after you do your equity meeting, let us know what it is we can do to support. That would be great.
We'd be glad to do that. And one of the things that we've also been talking a lot about is, I'm going to get my numbers wrong, but the the law that was passed for the new sex ed bill in Washington State and the movement right now to, what's the correct word? I'm an English teacher, revoke it. And so who we vote for superintendent in Washington is important. How we vote on, I think it's Initiative 90 is important. And so there are some steps that we can take politically as well to support this, because as we know, if you make it a law, then all the schools will do it, right? Not just the schools that have student groups who are really advocating for it.
Right.
And we can get more information on that too. We'll talk about this and we'll get back to you, Rita, with some more action steps. Thank you, Reed. I so appreciate your chat monitoring, and anytime you want to come and join one of my high school classes and do that for me, that'd be awesome.
I'm just so moved and grateful that you're all here and that we're having these conversations. And Gigi, I'm so grateful to your group for joining with us, because it really broadens our experience. The more voices, the better. And I just feel so enriched by your presence, Emily, too. So thank you so much.